Welcome to Music and Medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Moshe Lewis. Excited today to have J. August Richards with us. You don't know, I've been following you since Good Burger.
Wow.
And you might just think I'm saying that, but I got a 6-year-old. So we have seen that film 15 times
Wow.
at least, and the wife loves Parliament. So I've been to 12 of his concerts. So trust me, know every line. So
Fantastic.
it goes way back.
Nice.
But an amazing career. I mean,
Sidebar,
go ahead.
Good Burger.
Okay.
We have a drinking game amongst my Twitter followers.
Okay.
Once a week, invariably, somebody tweets me, I didn't know you were in Good Burger. And so it's a drinking game. We always drink when I get that
Right.
tweet.
And you get those mango drinks? No, but so many amazing shows. Vampire Academy, Angel, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I mean, it's just incredible. Council of Dads. We can get into all of it. But I was really looking forward to this interview. I wanted to kind of roll back the clock of time and go back to Maryland, where you grew up, and just talk to us about some of the initial aspirations and how you really chose this field.
I came out the womb wanting to be an actor. I think the minute I discovered that there was such a thing as television, I wanted to crawl inside of it and be in it. They sat me in front of the TV for hours as a child. I used to watch Sesame Street. I learned how to do the Pledge of Allegiance from there, and they used to put me on stage at church and events and do the Pledge of Allegiance when I was like 3 years old. So the performer in me was always, present. And so I went to a performing arts high school.
Right.
All the schools in my neighborhood were desegregated every year that I went to them. So they came up with these programs to attract kids from the white neighborhoods to come to the black neighborhoods. So they made a visual and performing arts school. And I went there, and so I've always known I wanted to be an actor. There was never any question about anything else.
Sure.
Yeah.
But you just literally got discovered. Talk to us about that, because so many people say, oh, that'll never happen.
Right.
That person couldn't have been telling the truth. But
I
they were.
mean, did I get discovered? I mean, I feel like I put the work in. So it's interesting, because I'm sure we're going to talk about my online course in a minute, but it occurred to me that booking my first job in life ever, which was on the Cosby Show, is all that I am teaching now in my course. I realized I wanted to be an actor. I enrolled in a visual and performing arts high school. I started training, doing plays. I saw that there was this thing called the Cosby Show. I said, I look like somebody that should be on the Cosby Show. Why can't I be on the Cosby Show? I read the credits. I discovered there was a thing called a casting director. I said, that must be the person who puts the people on the show. I called information, got his phone number. I called his office, 14 years old. Called his office, right. Remember how you had to call information? It was 212-555-1212, New York area code. Called his office, said, hey, my name is Jamie Richards. I want to be on the Cosby Show. One day, lucky enough, he answered. I called so many times. He answered the phone himself one time. And he said, kid, that's not how it works. Do you have an agent? I was like, no. He said, I'm going to be in an acting camp in New York. Come up here. You'll learn all about the business. So I got $700 from my mom, went up to the acting camp. He was there. He asked, does anybody want to read? I said, me. I got up on stage. He was like, you're great. If you're ever in New York, look me up. Monday, I flew to New York. I showed up at his office. He said, I didn't tell you to come to New York. And I was like, well, I'm here now. He was like, we happen to be casting the role of Vanessa's boyfriend, Roy.
Right.
Gave me the sides. I read. He said, can you come back at 3? Absolutely. Came back at 3, got the part.
Right.
Saying all that to say, so you asked me about being discovered. I don't know that I feel like I've been discovered. I feel like I've put in a lot of hard work, and I feel like there's something intrinsic in me that understands the rhythm of television. So I'm trying to kind of teach that now with my course, but I'm sure we'll get there in a minute.
Absolutely. So talk to us about that, since you talked about the rhythm. You have been on some amazing series, Grey's Anatomy, so many different roles and things like that. How do you go about choosing and pursuing some of them now versus maybe at first when you were making the phone calls?
Yeah, man, I feel like we choose each other. I feel like the role chooses me and I choose the role. I used to be very strategic about what I wanted, but I realize now that sometimes with my human understanding, I don't know what the best roles are for me. So it's a give and take. I let them choose me and I choose them as well. But for me, I'm looking for an immersive experience in a role. I'm looking to get immersed in a world, not just in a character, because I do want to get immersed in the character as well, but I'm also very interested in the world of the piece.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I want to pick an example of that in maybe Vampire Academy, because that
perfect
is
example.
totally beyond the scope of something one might expect to even have the opportunity. You're filming overseas, you're filming in a created world that is actually based in history. Talk to us about being part of that production.
Yeah, that was a really full circle moment for me because being on Angel and being one of the quote unquote kids on the show, in the Buffy and Angel world, there was an actor named Anthony Stewart Head who played sort of the elder statesman. So on Vampire Academy, I became that elder statesman. So that was a new character to kind of live in, the authority figure, the character with the gravitas, right? I'd never really been asked to play that before, and it was a big challenge. It was definitely a world that I was not familiar with, but I really had to find my way in. And ironically, as different as that character was, which is for the first time I was playing a vampire, I mean, he had a lot of things that were different than me, but in that character, I kind of just got lost in the experience of playing Victor. He's such a, a grand man. And I always, it's funny because I feel it in my spine right now just talking about him. I've never stood that erect in my entire career. Like every time I was him, I just threw my shoulders back and just stood up so straight. And it just, I did that for the 6 months that we were shooting.
Before we move forward to Council of Dads, I want to go back as we were talking offline about Good Burger. And I'd be remiss if the audience didn't get to hear some of that conversation. One of my favorites, my kid's favorite, Parliament. They haven't been in too many movies. So talk to us about not only how iconic it's been, but how maybe unpredictable it was that it would go so far into our culture as it has.
Speaking about how, it's a give and take, at the time of Good Burger, I booked another film that was supposedly going to be more big, right? But because of scheduling, I could only do Good Burger. And so now all these years later, people still hit me on social media asking me if I was in Good Burger, asking me if I want to be in the sequel. So I didn't know that that would be a sort of a, defining role in a lot of ways. I do feel like on my gravestone it's gonna say, here lies J. August Richards of Good Burger. In all the things I've done, people still say, weren't you in Good Burger? And that trips me out, because it was like 25 years ago.
On that note, why do you think it's become such a cult classic?
Wow, I think it's become a cult classic because so many people saw it in their childhood. Like the things that I have from my childhood, I carry with me, and never let them go. But, the sequel is out now, so. And it's about the talent of those two guys, Keenan and Kel. I mean, their chemistry is amazing, and I talk about that in the course too. I think that television is about roles that feel like a hand in a glove. So even if you get offered or auditioned for a role, you gotta make it you. You gotta make it feel so entirely you. Like on television, iconic characters, if you think about the actors who played these iconic characters, they are nothing like the character. It's also about knowing how you're perceived and either leaning into it or leaning away from it, or getting people to change their perception about you. So that's why I think the show's been so successful.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's just such a good foundation, which is what I wanted to lay before we got to Council of Dads, because here you are, a black male in Hollywood, and you get presented a role, which obviously was of interest to me, of playing a doctor. But it forced you to not only go within, but I feel to work through a lot of therapy and also come out. Talk to us about just initially even getting the script and how you felt like, I want to define this character to be who I really am.
So sorry to keep taking it back to my course, but in a chapter on my course called Securing the Next Job, I talk about how between jobs, when you have that time off, it's about finding a new part of yourself to share with the camera. Otherwise, you become redundant. So this role was presented to me, and it's in line with all of the roles I've played before. I feel like my niche in a lot of ways is playing men who have to protect their families under extreme circumstances. I feel like that's kind of my wheelhouse in a lot of ways. So I was playing a character who was gay. I am gay in real life. I had never shared that with the people that I work with for professional reasons, but also it just didn't feel necessary. But I knew that in order to give the performance I wanted to give, it was gonna require me to show up in a new way. Because in the course, I talk about how you have to take creative ownership of a role. You have to be willing to show yourself in all of your fullness, because that's the only way that the audience is gonna connect to you and feel that character. So I knew that I couldn't come to that set, playing that character, tipping and dipping. You know what I'm saying? I had to be honest and show up fully. And that was, scary for me in a lot of ways, because as a black man in Hollywood, I'm already dealing with a limited perception, right? And so in a lot of ways, I'm actually now I could be limiting myself even more, but I made a few calculated risks, which was I decided that the Hollywood that I'm in now is not the Hollywood that I started in. The Hollywood that I started in,
it wouldn't have been a chance.
oh my God, not even, So I felt also too that I had to trust myself and my abilities and know that Beyonce says in the Renaissance film, I no longer have anything to prove. I feel like that too. I mean, I feel like if you look at my resume,
30 years.
the 30 years of the work that I've done, I feel like I really don't have anything to prove anymore. So I felt that it was more important that I show up fully, and just for myself as a human being. For once in my life, I wanted to know what it felt like to be free, to not care what anybody else's perception of me is, and really just rock with my own perception of myself. Because I feel like I'm talented enough and smart enough and interesting enough to overcome any boundaries. That's how I feel about myself now. And that's a gift that I gave to myself, and I'll always admire myself for that.
Right. Let's delve into a little bit about how important it is, I think, especially at this time, for America, Christians, because you speak a lot about God as well, to deal with that homophobia and not be so afraid to put it aside in a box, despite what they may say in public.
Sure. Wow. So I got married recently. And when I came out, I wasn't really faced with a lot of hate per se, but getting married, I was. And a lot of people were coming at me from a Christian standpoint. Now I am a Christian. I love the Lord, and that will never change. So they were coming at me, and I realized two things. In that moment, I'm never gonna argue with a Christian from an anonymous account. I don't know what kind of Christian you are if you feel like you have to hide your faith, because you're hiding your faith because you know you're gonna get fired if your boss sees that. But if you really had faith, you'd rock with your real opinion. Never arguing with anybody from an anonymous account. Somebody quoted a scripture about something about beware of people trying to make evil look like it's good. And in that moment, I had a moment of clarity where I realized if me and my husband sitting on the couch watching the Kardashians is your idea of evil, we just have two different ideas of evil. And so I just can't, we have to just part ways at that point. I know in my spirit what I'm not doing is evil. And, I also realized that a part of faith is your own personal understanding. And so it's really not your business or anybody else's business to worry about what I'm doing. I believe that I'm good.
You went through a lot of therapy, and I think that's so important for us to hear about the work, the reading, listening to mentors, talking to other people, really getting feedback. Some of the tenets you walked away with, and I've heard you speak on them: love, acceptance of self, and knowing who I am. Tell us about just how important that is, not only for every black actor, but every person in Hollywood, however different or same they may be.
I realized at a certain point that I had really been indoctrinated by the media, church, family, friends, school, you name it. As a kid who's a part of the LGBT community, you grow up in a world that is constantly sending you this message that you are not okay. You also see certain other people in your family and in your community being accepted, doing things that you feel are wrong, but you are the only one that is the pariah. The pain of that for decades of a child growing up with that, it took a lot of undoing to get rid of that and be able to stand in my own truth. Because to me, it's much more damaging to kind of keep the secret. It's damaging for you, it's damaging for the people around you to not be honest about who you are and what you're feeling and what is honest for you. So that was my work. I mean, I did work for, a decade, honestly, just working through my stuff. And a lot of my stuff had nothing to do with sexuality. It had a lot to do with, the society that we grow up in. Even as a black man, the messages that are sent to me from that I had to undo. So I was committed to breaking loose. That involved therapy, psychotherapy, which was my drug of choice, if you will.
I'll take that.
Church.
Yes, absolutely.
Church.
And being able to confront that.
Reading, you know, talking to friends, being a part of groups, support groups. I threw everything but the kitchen sink at it, and it worked. There is work that you can do to break free of the pains that only you know you're going through. So
I think that lays a good foundation for your course. And what are the things that inspired you to actually put it together, and who is it that you really know you can help?
So one of the things that really inspired me to put the course together was that, you know, someone helped me. So when I was a young actor and I was booking a lot of co-stars and guest stars, but not really figuring out what I was doing wrong to booking a series regular, I had the good fortune of getting invited to take an acting class that was taught by Michael Beach and Eric LaSalle. And that class was magical for me because I feel like every artist has that key that can unlock their potential. And that class had that key for me. I heard a few things that made everything make sense to me. And once I finally got it, I remembered a few months into the class, I had 3 auditions on one day and I booked 2 of them. And I was like, I know what I'm doing now. I know what I'm doing. And so throughout my career, I've also noticed things that I did that led to success. I turned 1 series into 2. You know, the second one is harder to get than the first one. That's a whole nother story. I turned 1 into 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, recurring roles, guest stars, you know, all this press, all these things. And I started to understand that there was a method to my madness. And I was like, one day I'm gonna share that with people so that they don't have to stumble in the dark like I did. So the strike came and I just started writing it. And the next thing you know, it was done. Being a series regular was born.
Right. And on that note, we were talking about a little bit earlier, what are some of the challenges that you feel sort of exist with the press, since that's one of the reasons why we wanted to get together, it really helping cover our stories and our actors, whatever level they may be, as we said, mainstream or if they're in a black film.
Yeah, press is a challenge for black actors in general, but specifically for black actors who work on mainstream shows. It's a real challenge because the mainstream press has no time for you if you're not the number 1 or number 2 on the call sheet. Then black press, rightly so, focuses on stars of black shows, which is exactly how it should be, I feel. So as a black actor who does mainstream stuff, you fall through the cracks unless you're that number 1. Here's the catch-22. In my career, I've auditioned 2 or 3 times to play the lead character on a show, right? I remember once early on in my career, a white counterpart of mine who had just moved to LA had auditioned for like 4 leads of shows, so his quote was higher than mine, and he just got here. So, you know, we all know that there are challenges that black actors face. I'm going to do a separate module of my course for free called Being a Series Regular, the Black Male Edition. And I'm gonna go through the 7 challenges that I feel like black men face in network television, in mainstream television.
So as we are going through such an evolving time, what are some of the things that you hope or that you feel can come out of AI, the strike being over, things of this nature, to really help improve just what we see and our stories being told even better? Yeah, personally, I don't fear artificial intelligence. I think it could be an incredible tool. But listen, at the same time, I thought email was a fad. So I'm no futurist. I can't predict the future. I don't know technology that well. But I don't fear artificial intelligence because I love what I do. So if I can't do it in TV and film, I'm gonna do it in theater. So that's not to say that I wanna see the industry decimated, but I just feel that there will always be a need for a human being to hear from another human being. I know that, and I just put that in the bank. And so I'm not afraid of artificial intelligence. I use it in my own, I mean, that's a silly statement because we all do. Artificial intelligence is a part of our lives. This is a part of the progress of the world, and we have to progress with it. Last question. Tell us about what you're working on, where we can find your course and more. Yeah, so if anybody wants to take my course, it's at www.beingaseriesregular.com. It's for people who just moved to LA. It's for people who've done 7 series like me. I think there's something for everyone. I feel like the job of being a series regular is one that I understand. I've been doing it for 25 years, and I feel like I have something to say about it, the job, the position itself. It's made to inspire and educate, so all are welcome. Definitely. And you've been an inspiration to us. I mean, not only just following you those years, but taking on those challenges, continuing to stay positive, and continuing to learn more about yourself and being willing to share it in a vulnerable way and an open way. That alone, like I said, sometimes, oh, let me go and look at the DMs. It does take a lot, because sometimes people will feel totally torn down by just one comment. And like you said, if you're hiding behind the internet, you know, where's really the substance? The haters come and they go. They really are just, you know, people that will think out loud, so to speak.
I don't know what's happened to me, but I like it now.
Yes.
I like the energy, because I know that I'm moving something.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Such a pleasure.
Great talking to
Appreciate
you.
it. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Great
Thanks.
talking to you.